Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Against All Odds. And as I say at the beginning of every podcast, it is a purely selfish podcast because I love to talk to people that have a wow story and inspire me. And today is no exception. I'm so honoured to welcome an incredible lady, Sarah Stevenson. How are you, my lovely?
Hiya, I'm very, very well. Nearly blown away this morning, out and about, but yeah, all is calm now, so I'm good. Yeah.
It's a bit odd weather for July, isn't it? I was actually wearing a jumper yesterday.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit unseasonable, but we are approaching my birthday in a couple of weeks, and it's normally pretty dodgy around then. So we can blame me if you want.
All right, okay, that's fair enough. Right, so I invited you onto this podcast because I heard your story and saw what you've been doing in the boxing and the why you've got into it. So I do need to warn people there is talk of domestic violence in this episode, but I still urge everybody to listen to it because it's inspirational and I think it can help many. So, Sarah, the boxing, you did amazing. You did absolutely incredible. But why? Let's go right back to the beginning and how you ended up on that journey of boxing and jiu-jitsu and everything that you do now.
Yeah, sure. So it was nothing that I'd sort of ever really been involved in before. As a child doing activities, kind of growing up and everything. From a sporting point of view, I got sort of quite deeply into sport, into tennis through my teenage years, and then my 20s and early 30s. But martial arts, boxing, combat sports, anything like that wasn't really sort of anything that was on my radar, other than I did used to enjoy watching the boxing with my dad as a child. I was of the era of Frank Bruno and Mike Tyson. So
Yeah, yeah.
so in my sort of kind of tomboy phase and stuff like that, which has never gone away, I did enjoy watching those things. For me, actually taking that step to become involved in kickboxing first of all came about due to my personal circumstances, and really a flashpoint in my relationship that made me feel physically very, very vulnerable. And it was like something in my head kind of went, oh, I don't actually want to feel physically that vulnerable again, if I can avoid it. So there was that sort of element to it, and obviously just from a mental health and well-being point of view. What I very quickly found when I started was that you can't really think about all of the other things that are impacting your life when you're training to that level of intensity. So that really was what hooked me in and kind of kept me going. I guess more than anything. And the environment in the gyms and stuff, which I'm sure we can chat about as we go along. I personally found it to be a very supportive, very nurturing family environment, which I think is probably not what people that don't understand the sports would expect.
Yeah.
So yeah, all of those things really.
Yeah. So you had a really rough time in your relationship. Were you married?
Not to the partner that we're speaking about, no, which is probably one of the things that was one of the best things to kind of come out of that situation was that we weren't married. That would have made things even more complicated than they were. So yeah.
Yeah. But it's one of those relationships when you were telling me about I didn't you hear about things like that on films and things like that, but it was quite psychotic behavior in the end, wasn't it? And it's taken you a while to stop that as well. So tell me about when
Yeah.
it started, how long you've been together and what was involved in that.
Yeah, so I mean, if we sort of rewind right back to the beginning of everything, I know now with the benefit of hindsight that um this relationship was always going to be the way it was, from the point of view that the person involved probably saw some vulnerabilities and some naivety in me as a woman in our very early 20s that in all honesty, I probably did lead an extremely sheltered, extremely happy life, if you like, as a child and a
Yeah.
teenager growing up. He was a person who was a lot older than me, interested in the same things. We were involved in the same sport, in tennis, at the time. And I know now that he really did use his position of sort of power over me to get me into that relationship in the first place.
Mm.
You don't know that at the time, though.
No.
It's one of those where I think you've got that little bit of kind of cognitive disconnect in that, um, I would say I was an intelligent young woman. I knew about domestically abusive relationships and knew about perpetrators and the sorts of tactics and things like that that they could use and what that could lead to, but that didn't exist in my world. If you see
Yeah.
what I mean, not consciously anyway. So, I was thinking about it today before we came on, about a quote that I think always resonates with me quite a lot. And it was by Lauren Laverne, and anyone that knows anything about domestic abuse has probably seen this. She's the DJ, and she said it's like you're in a box, but the biggest trick is you don't know how you got into the box. And potentially at first you thought it was a treasure box, that there was something good in the box. And I think that was definitely the case with me. The person in question was quite charismatic, quite exciting to be around, treated me in ways that possibly in my other relationships as a young woman I didn't get treated, held doors open, made me feel special
Yeah.
and all of that. But then as Lauren Laverne stated, somehow that box starts to shrink, and every time you touch the sides it gets smaller. So you try to remove the bits of you that you feel are the problem, and you get smaller and smaller and smaller, but you can never quite do enough to stop the box from shrinking and to have enough space to not touch the sides like that touch paper, start that argument. So yeah, I would say that's really how things kind of developed. And in terms of the abusive nature of the relationship, it was very much what we would recognize now as coercive control, and controlling behaviors. But back then at the time, I don't really think it was very well defined. So even as I began to realize that there was something not right about the situation, I didn't really have a vocabulary to be able to tell that to anybody. And then even when the sort of the touch point in the relationship came that ended the relationship, expressing that to people, such as the police, such as children's social care and other professionals, again it was like, okay, well, we're starting to recognize this, but there's really nothing we can do about it. It's not
Yeah.
criminal behavior. It was
Mm.
almost like it's not harm. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you say because you've got children with him? Did you say it got worse after you were pregnant?
Yes, I would say so. And again, now with the benefit of kind of my professional training, which again we can talk about if you like, being in
Yeah.
healthcare as a midwife and a health visitor, and especially one that was interested in domestic abuse. So I took extra training, knowing what I know now about the psychology of people who potentially have some narcissistic traits about them. The pregnancy and the children were certainly a trigger for him to start expressing greater feelings and projections of jealousy, very very childlike behavior
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
There were
So
lots
like
of
he was losing the attention off you. Was it
yeah
that? Yeah.
Yeah, so lots of very low level things, such as moving things in the house, leaving additional tasks, jobs, mess, and things like that to do when you're trying to care for a young baby. More overt things such as literally getting up and leaving the house in the middle of the night without saying anything, and leaving leaving me with two small children, with no explanation as to where he's gone. and those sorts of things started to come out in that way, along with really sort of an escalation of control and undermining self-confidence and self-esteem, and ultimately leading into what was more overt gaslighting, I would say, where you start to sort of question your reality, which is really weird talking about it and looking back on it now, to think that I was in the middle of all of that.
Yeah. Did
Quite
you
strange.
ever have a thought, like, when you was pregnant, that he might take some responsibility and change and kind of be the person that he should have been and what you needed him to be?
Yes, I would say that was an element to it, definitely. In that, I suppose, in a way, again, it's kind of that lack of understanding that there can be people in the world that are literally, because of lots of reasons, it depends on the individual, but not able or willing to do that.
Yeah.
Because when you're not set up like that, when you kind of possess normal human emotions, and you can have empathy, and you can want to support and love, your partner, your
Mm,
children, everybody else, to start to realize that you can be intimately involved with a person who just doesn't have those capabilities is
yeah.
it's yeah. Sometimes now, even my mind kind of still, it's almost like, how does that happen? How can that be a human being? So there was definitely some of that. And then I think on the other side of it, not that I want this to sound like sort of self blame, because again, through a lot of kind of working through where the feelings come from, I realize it's not that now. But also, I felt strongly like I could be better, I could be good enough. If I could make the situation into a one where he would be happier, then
Yeah.
all of those other things would come along from there. So that in some way, if I was unable to do that, then that would be my failing, as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So there was two sides to
Yeah.
that coin, I guess.
Yeah. Women do have, I've been in a relationship where you think you can fix them. Yeah. I think it is a woman thing. I don't think men do that. They might do. I don't know. I've never been a man, but like, you see a lot of women who, like, you know, they get involved with people that they wouldn't normally get involved with, but it's like, I can fix you,
Yeah.
and it's
Mhm.
mentality. And I think it's a hard lesson to learn, that we can't fix people. But it
Yeah.
started to get violent as well in your relationship, didn't it?
It did, I would say, physical at first rather than overt violence. He was very aware of what he was doing. As much as I think that there are parts to his personality that he cannot control, and that he always was potentially going to be this way. But he certainly knew what he was doing, and had particular tactics with me. So there was no direct sort of striking, as in hitting or anything like that, but there was physical control, and that could be from just making me feel physically uncomfortable by his presence. In terms of, he would corner me in rooms, usually the kitchen, actually using the corner of the kitchen benches to put one hand either side of me and be able to get very close to me while he was speaking to me, during, I suppose, what you would call it. There weren't really arguments. It's difficult to kind of to say what they were, because they were orchestrated.
Yeah.
So that was one element of things, and the other element of sort of unwanted physical control would potentially be around what he would try to explain away as affection, but it was unwanted, obviously, and deliberately designed to make me feel uncomfortable, not to make me feel attracted to him, or anything like that. And I know now that he knew exactly what he was doing with that. So
Yeah.
those were kind of the two elements of that. Um, but as we've sort of hinted at already, there was an occasion where he did lose that bit of self-control, because he could exhibit a great deal of self-control with that, and it did become more violent with pushing, including pushing me to the ground in front of the children and going for me. And that's at the point where I needed to take steps to defend myself and make him leave the property, mainly due to fear for the children, not for him to physically do something to the children, but if he physically did something to me, what would then happen with them?
With them, yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of where it all the years of everything eventually kind of led up to.
Yeah, he was very manipulative. I can't even say that word, but that was the instance we spoke about where he passed you the knife. Was that the final?
Yeah, that happened. That actually happened on more than one occasion. But yeah, sorry, I got distracted when I was telling you about that. But yeah, so again, when cornering me, particularly in the kitchen or things like that, his tactic would be to suggest, in fact, that I was the violent one. Often he would corner me and pin my arms to my sides, but he would explain that away by he was preventing me from striking him or from striking myself or even the children, he suggested at one point. So yeah, and another tactic of his during those conversations would be to force objects into my hands, such as the kitchen knives or possibly a glass or even just a piece of crockery or whatever, and tell me to use them on him, because that's what I wanted. I was a nasty, horrible, violent person with a temper, and that's what I wanted to do to him. So yeah.
That's like heavily victim mentality, isn't it, as well? He wants to play the victim, which is very odd when he's controlling the situation as well, isn't it? It's
yeah, absolutely. Like I say, he's within his kind of personality, this came out sort of after the end of the relationship and everything that happened subsequent to that through family court. It's very, very important to him to be seen as a good person, as a moral person, as an upstanding person, as somebody that would not behave in any of the ways that he actually did behave, which I suppose could be seen as quite common amongst people that do behave in that way. And I think to a greater or lesser extent, he does believe that as well, which is why he can at first come across quite plausibly. So I know that the very first thing that he did when he left my house on that day was to call the police and to tell them that I had attacked him. And again, without sort of going into too much sort of detail or graphicness, I know because a female officer told me that when he presented at the police station, his face, his nose was bleeding, his mouth was bleeding. Now, I can't say for absolutely sure that what I did to defend myself didn't cause that, but I know that he was not bleeding when he left the house. So, so yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're going through court long. It was a long kind of played out journey with court cases and things like that. Have you finally been able to get rid of him? Because even after you split up, he was still giving you like shit, wasn't he?
Yeah, so unfortunately, because we do have two children together who are absolutely wonderful, and they're just like, along with their brother who's from a different relationship. I can't leave him out. I have to say that they're my life, and then just leave Robbie out, bless him. But yeah, so obviously with having children, that permanent connection is kind of always going to be there, and certainly when the girls were younger, it was very much there. And unfortunately, as is becoming more recognized now as well, there are a lot of perpetrators of domestic abuse that will then continue that post separation with the children, and actually using the family court system to be able to continue what they were doing. And I've spent 10 years in that reality, in that system. And you know, I've come through it and my girls have come through it, and sometimes I really, really wonder how they've turned out as far as they are now at 16 and 13 to be such wonderful, kind, caring, considerate children that are doing really well. Because it's, if I'm being honest, that has probably been what has been more difficult to cope with emotionally, psychologically, than the abuse within the relationship.
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said, and this is up until as recently as last year, March 2023, when as I think as a bit of a hope, as a bit of a last roll of the dice, he started exhibiting some stalking type behaviors of coming to the house, visiting the house at various different times. And I believe that was, I don't actually believe that was to try and gain access to me. It was to try and gain access to the girls, because they've both independently taken the decision that they don't want to have a relationship with their father at the present time, which obviously I'm supportive of, but that itself hasn't come through me sort of saying that should be that way. But yeah, so that went on until that point, and unfortunately had to involve the police again. But since then, everything has been a lot calmer from that point of view. I'm doing the midwife thing where we don't want to say the Q word. We don't want to say the calm word, but yeah, at the moment it is.
Yes, so that being a midwife, and you're not only just a midwife, are you? You're so much more than that. So were you doing that all the way through your relationship with him?
No, that's come after. So in terms of kind of a career timeline, if you like, when we were together, we were connected through both being involved in the sport of tennis and both working professionally in that field. Through completely different sets of circumstances, I had to have a career change, a little bit accident prone, and tore all of my rotator cuff in my shoulder at one point. Had to have an operation to stabilize that. So that's when I sort of reassessed what I was going to do as a career going forward. It did coincide with the relationship reaching that sort of end point, and probably there was some interplay of the two things going on, because I think he knew that I was potentially going to be moving out of that line of work, progressing, doing something entirely different, mixing with different people. And I think that made him feel very uncomfortable. But yeah, so having reassessed what I wanted to do with myself, I was doing some volunteering with a youth group over in Blythe, and I got the opportunity to work with a specialist teenage pregnancy midwife who is an absolutely wonderful person, and she's still in clinical practice just now, and anybody that gets to have her as our midwife are very, very lucky people. But I went to work, I went to volunteer there, and through that's how I sort of decided on, yes, actually I would really like to explore this, and applied to do my midwifery training. And from there, did my qualifications. Took me a little bit longer than it should have done because I had a motorbike accident and smashed my knee to smithereens. Did mention that accidents were a bit of a theme of my life. But yeah, I worked in clinical practice in midwifery. I then subsequently went and worked on community, because I just absolutely love working in community, working with people in their own environments and everything, like seeing people in their natural environment as opposed to a clinical environment, I guess. And then from there did my health visiting qualifications, and just sort of just over 18 months now. For 18 months I've been working back at Northumbria Uni as a midwifery lecturer. So I feel like I've kind of completed this little circle where I'm hopefully supporting the next lot of students to go out there and do what I did. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. What a woman. So being in that role, you get to see women face to face. So you're able to kind of pick up on certain things, aren't you? And signpost women that possibly been in your situation to the right people. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so through my right from sort of, well, even before I started training to be a midwife, because I did work for a time in sexual health services and things like that. And that's when I started to get a bit more of an awareness of the developments that were happening professionally around domestic abuse and violence, new initiatives that were sort of taking place. It was one of the first times that I really truly realized the enormity, if you like, of the situation that I'd lived just a few years before, because I actually was doing a presentation around they call it the DASH risk assessment checklist that's used by professionals with women who've maybe disclosed domestic abuse, or the professional feels that might be an aspect. And as I was reading the checklist to do my presentation and sort of answering in my head the questions for myself, I was like, oh, I would have scored quite highly with that.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, I mean, professionally, in terms of spotting signs of domestic abuse and violence, and then also potentially being the person that receives a disclosure. I think and it's actually shown through research that midwives are in a very privileged position when it comes to that. I think there's some research that actually shows that women are much more likely to make a disclosure to a healthcare professional that they've had some sort of continuity with, than they would be to any other professional group such as police or anything like that. So it was always really important for me in my role to consider that. Over the time that I spent in clinical practice, I would say that I had at least 4 overt disclosures of abuse made to me, and probably countless other situations where I have had cause for some degree of concern.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's important. A particular interest area of mine, because of my situation, is as health professionals, particularly as nurses and midwives, because we know that domestic abuse and violence is a gendered phenomenon, although that's not at all to take anything away from the men that have also been victims or experienced that in their lives. But with the nursing and midwifery workforce being so predominantly female, and we know that the figures at a very conservative estimate, or at least 25% of the female population will have experienced something like this. I have a particular interest in what that means for us as professionals going out there potentially with trauma reactivation, vicarious trauma, and how are we able to look after ourselves whilst also supporting the person who's chosen to disclose to you, which is, like I said before, a massive position of privilege actually, that they would do that. So yeah, it's always been very important to me from that point of view, I guess.
Yeah, because I suppose it's one of those things, like you would be the best person to talk to, but if you've been through it as well, you're always at a kind of a danger zone to see if it brings anything back up for you, because it must have been hard when you decided to make that decision to leave, because you know it was the right thing to do, but you still got your emotions to deal with.
Yeah.
That's a hard place to be. So I mean, yeah, I'm assuming your confidence and your self-esteem was rock bottom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, through the research, and there's people, that know a lot more about it than I do, such as, the IDVAs, the independent domestic abuse and violence advisors, and things like that. That time of separation is obviously emotionally for the person involved. One of the most difficult times, but also from a safety point of view as well, for both the woman and children if they're involved. So yeah, very it's a very difficult time, and I think that's why it's important to have an awareness of, if someone does make a disclosure to you, you need to be able to signpost, as you say, to the correct sources of support. You need to be able to listen effectively and be of support yourself, but also to really steer away from starting to try and tell that person what they should do for their own well-being or their own safety, or that, because when you're in that place, you can't really process that, but B, and it's very difficult for people who haven't been in that position to realize this, you have created your own toolkit of safety.
Yeah.
And that might be staying, and that might be saying or doing things that will placate the person who's perpetrating the abuse towards you. And that's not to say that the alternative of being able to take that step to leave, if you know, if you can make a suitable safety plan and things like that, might not be in the long term the better solution, if you like. But right there and then, that's not necessarily something that you can take on board.
Yeah.
So yeah, being able to talk around that is quite tricky.
Yeah.
But I think that having lived it, you do potentially have more appreciation of it, and perhaps bring more skills to it. That's not to say that other people who haven't can't do that, but if you look at the figures of people who go into caring professions such as midwives, nurses, social workers, domestic abuse advisors, what you tend to find is that there's a really high proportion of people that have that lived experience as well. So
Yeah, do you know what? It's one of those things where I obviously I interview a lot of people, and when I ask them why they do their job, it's always because they've been through like some trauma or challenge in life, and they want to help other people through it, or they want to stop other people going through it. And it doesn't matter what industry it's covered. Everybody says it's to help other people go through what they've been through, and I find that so powerful, because I honestly believe that if you put somebody that is going through domestic violence, they would rather come to you having knowledge than somebody that's just sat and done a course on counselling. And that's not knocking any counsellors, but I think for me, in any kind of life situation, I would prefer to go and speak to somebody who's got actual experience in it.
No, I would.
Why it works, yeah.
I would agree. I think that does help people to be able to open up and make disclosures and just start that conversation, that sort of two-way thing. So yeah, no, like I say, I definitely agree. I'm interested to explore a little bit further around the well-being of the professionals and the practitioners in that realm. So that's something for the future.
Yeah, I love that. Right, let's talk about this boxing, mate, because let's start from the beginning with the boxing. And how old were you when you started this as well?
So when I first walked through the door of a kickboxing gym, I think I will have been, you see, I have to work this out because I'm getting that old. I can't remember what age I was at times. So when did I have my shoulder operation? I must have been 34-ish,
Right,
I think.
okay, yeah.
When I first set foot in a gym. So possibly by some people's reckoning, maybe he's a little bit old to be embarking on a new sport.
Apparently 40 is the new old if you speak to anybody. I'm not happy with that.
We'll just ignore that, shall we?
Yeah, we'll definitely ignore that, mate.
Yeah. So 34. Really interested in going and learning some skills and things, and getting back to a level of fitness, because I had quite a long time off with the shoulder and the shoulder injury, which I totally underestimated the recovery period from that, and I soon found out it was going to take a while. And yeah, like I say, for confidence building and self-esteem and fitness and all of that, with not a thought in my head really about taking it into sort of competing or doing any gradings as you do in sort of kickboxing, similar to karate and all of that. But yeah, then stuff just sort of snowballed and happened, and I ended up doing all of those things. So
it's like all or nothing. You chose the all, right?
yeah, I think if my friends and people that know me would say that that is, yeah, I don't do bits of stuff. I do the whole lot.
I love that. So how long were you training before you decided, actually, I'm going to get in a ring and go for it?
So I was probably about 4-5 months in going to the gym that I was at. My coach Scott, who's retired from coaching now, but he's absolutely wonderful, was working in the ring with me one day on the pads, and he just said, "I'd love to see you have a fight." And I was like, okay, really? And he was as a gym, he was organizing our own sort of home competition, if you like. And he was like, yeah, you know, I think you would be ready in a couple of months if you want to step on the mats for something that we call in kickboxing light contact, LC. My daughter, a few years later, when she was taking part in her first little tournament, after she'd had her first round, came off and said, "Mom, why do we call it light when it's not light and it hurts you?" so yeah, yeah, I always find light contact interesting because yeah, it's not usually that light. So yeah, so I agreed and said that I would do that as a first competition. Went on for my first fight in a little round robin competition. I had decided not to sort of try and reduce my weight or anything for the competition. There's only 2 bands that you can compete in at that for females at the time, so it's either 65 kilos and under or 65 kilos and over, and I think I was sitting at about 67, 68 kilos at the time, but didn't consider myself to be that small. And then after that competition, I very much decided I would lose the 2 kilos and get to 65, because the women I fought were a lot bigger than me and very, very strong. But having said that, I think I won 1 fight and lost 2. But I had a fantastic time, and one of the lasses that I lost to got a hold of us at the end. She was a bit more experienced than me, and just went, "You won't stop doing it, will you? You're going to be really good. Please don't let this put you off." And I was just like, "Yeah, okay, whatever," thinking I'm never doing that again. And but yeah, went away from that, and you know, it only took a couple more weeks of training of like, yeah, actually, let's get in the correct weight category, let's go again. And there was another local competition on must have been maybe 3 months after that, 3 to 5 months after that, anyway, in the springtime. And I entered that one, and somehow or other I won a gold medal. So
Oh wow.
that was pretty cool. Yeah, and went from there with it. Really loved the kickboxing, did all my gradings up to getting my black belt in 20 when did I get my black belt? 2018, the end of 2018. Went into 2019 having qualified for WKO World Championships. So went to the World Championships in the summer of 2019, and came away with 3 silver medals. One of those was against the lassie that was 14 kilos heavier than me. So I sort of
wow.
I sort of take that as a gold, to be fair. They did offer me the belt for having qualified in my weight class, but I was very much of the opinion I wasn't taking something home without having had a fight on the night, as it were. So so I was much happier to go away with a silver that I felt I'd earned. And yeah, and that's where I got to with my kickboxing. Unfortunately, subsequent to that, the knee that I had hurt on my motorbike accident started to complain a little bit about
Yeah.
the intensity of all that training. So so I had to stop training for a while. It actually pretty much was coinciding with COVID anyway, so I suppose that was
Yeah, I stopped as it
one
everything, didn't it?
yeah, like stuff. So but but I was kind of, by that point I was boxing alongside my kickboxing as well. And unfortunately I was able to carry on the boxing when my knee had recovered a bit. And you know, subsequently gone on to have several sort of, some people call them semi-pro fights. I refuse to call it semi-pro because I don't see how you can be semi-professional at anything. They're unlicensed boxing fights because I was too old to box as an amateur.
Right.
So
They're definitely brutal matches though, aren't they?
sorry, brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The unlikely,
so
aren't they?
so what I would say about women's boxing or women's kickboxing at any level is I would say it's generally more intense, I think, than when the guys fight. We certainly leave it all in the ring. If you ever happen to be at a fight night at a show, the chances are that it is going to be a women's bout that is called fight of the night out of all the bouts that are on there. And yeah, we go absolutely all out for it. It's not about hurting each other and inflicting damage on the other person. It is about that physical test and winning and coming out on top. And I'm quite, obviously, because of everything else that's happened, I'm quite passionate about that and making sure that that is projected out there for people that don't really know. So in one of my fights, my second last fight, I fought a girl called Kate Brett, who's a cracking lass. And before the fight and after the fight, we promoted it as sport. It was boxing. It wasn't violence. And we did that raising money for Women's Aid, which was just fantastic to be able to do and raise awareness. And all of the guys at the boxing gym as well were really into that and really supportive of it. They all signed the white ribbon pledge as well, for sort of you know, highlighting and bringing an end of male violence to women. And I think that's quite powerful when a group of guys are prepared to sort of stand up and do that. So that really meant quite a lot, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we spoke about the gym mentality because people do assume that it's quite standoffish, even in a normal gym, let alone like a kickboxing gym or boxing gym. It's almost like fear of big egos and things like that, but it's not actually like that, is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I say, I've been involved in one way or another in sport, various different sports for a long time now. And the martial arts environment and the boxing environment, I would say, is one of the places where you get the least egos and things than that. In fact, that, you know, there's a lot of places where there's actually signs up basically telling you to do that. You leave your ego at the door and you come in and you work hard. Ego at the door and sweat on the floor is one of the gyms that I go to. That's what they've got on the walls there, and everybody's treated as an equal. There's a lot of fighting gyms in the area in the northeast, but the vast majority of those are as welcoming to people who want to go just for to keep fit, for their mental well-being. There's quite a few of the gyms are now doing things with Send and things like that, and featuring people with Send on their shows, on their fight nights, you know, and giving them the bouts equal standing, which I just think is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, you know, I definitely think if anybody is interested in a really good way to keep fit in a supportive environment, they couldn't go far wrong other than, you know, go and knock on the door of their local boxing gym and just go in and see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, Ben loves it. Ben loves going to the martial arts centre. He does like lots of boxing. Then it's for him, it's giving him like an area of discipline as well. Did you find that with yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting because I've had a year now with with elbow injuries, more injuries. So I've had a year now where I haven't been able to train really to anywhere near the level that I was before. And I guess that's highlighted to me just exactly how disciplined I was. It seemed very, very normal at the time to be training twice a day, 6 days a week, and having all my meals prepped and and everything. And then, like I say, obviously martial arts wise, on top of that, you've got that sort of internal discipline within the gym. And I don't want to call it a hierarchy because that has all of those kind of negative connotations,
Yeah.
but you do, but with the belts and the grading and things like that, you do have that. But it's done very positively with black belts partnering with white and yellow belts and bringing them on, and everyone's treated as an equal despite their rank, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this last year has highlighted just how disciplined and how structured, I guess, my life was, which I suppose really it kind of had to be, because thinking about it now, I was also a single parent to 3 children doing a full-time job and training for a career and also kickboxing to world level, which sounds a bit mad, actually.
Absolute legend, mate. Absolute legend. You are so inspirational. Do you remember right? Have you started? Do you jiu-jitsu as well, or you started?
No, not really. So I have done a bit of Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but
Oh wow.
I can't remember if we discussed this when we were on the phone or not. But that came about because I turned up at the wrong class because I went to the gym at the wrong time once. So I turned up and it's a lovely guy called James Hansen, who I haven't seen for absolute years, actually. And he ran the BJJ class at our gym. And my kickboxing coach, Scott, he would take part in that class. So I was like, oh, as I walked through the door and there's all of these men just like cuddling and rolling around on the floor. Like, what's going on here? And oh, you've come at the wrong time, Sarah, but that's okay. Just come and do this class. So I was like, all right then. So I did that and I was rubbish. Certainly not going to get anywhere near world level with that. It's a very, very different beast. But but I loved it and I continued to go because from that headspace point of view, probably even more than kickboxing, you can't think about anything else at all. You're thinking about what position your body's in, how you're moving, how you're going to counter what the other person is doing, and then, oh, shall I tap out now before I really get choked out and passed out, or will I, try this? So yeah, so like I said, definitely not a competitive jiu-jitsu practitioner, but an enthusiastic novice.
I just love it. You're just in for anything, aren't you? Anything that kind of pushes your boundaries and your limitations. You're just like there. Like,
Well,
it's so inspiring.
I just like to live, like, and I think, I don't know whether that came from spending several years where I was restricting myself so much that I think you could probably say that I wasn't living. I think to the outside world, I probably looked like I was living my best life. I was going up and down to Wimbledon and Roehampton. I was training some amazing young tennis players. That was all really positive. But internally, I was walking a line. And now I don't have to walk that line for anybody. And I don't.
Yeah, you'll make
And,
the most of it, and fair play, mate. Absolutely fair play. So what's coming up for you in the future, like work-wise, fitness-wise? What are you up to?
So, I actually got a bit of good news just, oh God, what day are we on? On Tuesday, because I had submitted my dissertation for masters, and that came back on Tuesday that I had passed that. My supervisor sent me an email, so that was fantastic. And that piece of work is really me having a go at trying to meld the two halves of my life together. And even I wondered how I would do that at first. How can I meld together all of this sports stuff and midwifery? And then I was like, hang on a minute. Well, female athletes have babies and they return to sport, and that's got to be kind of different for them than it is for, you know, the general population of pregnant women and new mothers. So I started having a bit of a look at that, and again, a bit of personal experience from having my own children. And there is some research out there, and it is growing, on the different physical considerations for female athletes. Much less and almost none on the emotional and psychological experiences and how that can be different, and the sorts of different challenges and needs of an elite athlete post pregnancy with that. And yeah, I just thought, well, hang on, this sounds perfect for me. And why is nobody really looking at this? Why is it not important? Because perinatal mental health is a massive, obviously, and very important area of midwifery focused and midwifery led research. But we seem to be missing out a group of women, albeit possibly some people might argue a relatively small niche group of women, but that doesn't mean that we should be ignoring them and their needs. So I had a little bit more of a look into that and discovered that, in fact, there's no midwifery research with athletes at all, for physical or emotional and psychological, that I could find. And then I was like, all of these women will have midwives. We will be the lead professional in the vast majority of cases for athletes, because they perfectly sort of fit the criteria for midwives to provide that role, because midwives are the lead professional in pregnancy and the postnatal period for women with, I hate using blanket terms, but normal low risk pregnancies. Oh, makes me shudder to use those generalizations. So I was like, well, if we're going to be their lead professional and we are going to be caring for them, advising them, potentially if they do experience maybe some low mood or postnatal depression or antenatal anxiety even, we're going to be advising them, but we don't really know about their psychology. We don't know how it's different. We don't know what their needs really are. Then how can we do that? So that was all of that in a nutshell was the focus of my dissertation, reviewing the literature, finding the evidence, and I'm hoping to package that neatly all together in a research proposal to take forward to PhD, and do some empirical research with athletes and hopefully bring that all together for that population, for the athlete population, but also with a view towards how can this be applied to other women who are maybe active at either a competitive level or even just a recreational level, but it's an important part of their life. So that's what I'm looking at over the next 3 to 5 years.
I love that. That's it. It's because when we spoke on the phone, it's like when you're pregnant, it's like, well, you can do a bit of exercise, but how much is a bit? Like, nobody's actually, oh, right, you can do this, you can't do this, you can do this to this level.
Yeah.
And you have to be specific with people.
Yeah.
Because what might be a lot to me might be something that a lot to somebody else. It's
and that's although there are guidelines around physical activity for the general pregnant population of 150 hours of moderate exercise a week for health benefits, and it's not harmful. Okay, what's your moderate? What's my moderate? What's my moderate? Are we talking cardiovascular exercise? Are we talking resistance and weight loading exercise? As a 5-month odd pregnant woman, can I moderately deadlift 100 kilos because that's moderate for me, or actually is that going to cause an issue? Although the evidence base is emerging, I'm not saying that there's no work going on in that area. It's certainly not. It's not really clearly defined. So definitely interested in looking at that going forward. And I guess the other thing that I don't think I've spoken to you about at all is the artwork that I now do. So that's the little thing that's circulating around the outside, because through COVID and through my injuries and not being able to have the outlet that I had with the physical activity, I sort of went back into drawing and sketching and things like that, and that sort of ballooned a little bit into a bit of a business. But one of my sort of main interests developing my research proposal forward is if, for example, one of our main interventions for moderate low mood post-pregnancy now would be to advise, some physical activity, and the benefits of physical activity on mood and everything like that are becoming really quite well established. But to my mind, and this is what my research is going to look at, if I was, for example, a competitive runner and I'm used to running marathons, and unfortunately I've had an experience during birth, an unexpected birth injury or something that potentially might mean the end of my career, and I'm now encountering some low mood. If I was then advised by my midwife or anybody else that I should maybe go for a nice walk around the park with my baby in the buggy, which is, it is a nice thing to do, but that's possibly not going to really be therapeutically that beneficial to
you still see it as a loss, wouldn't you? Your
so
head.
yeah
Yeah.
So I guess sort of looking at that, looking at alternative therapies, I've become quite interested in the role of art therapy for trauma, for various different alternatives. So it's all kind of coming together, hopefully.
Yeah, I love that. So one question that I ask everybody, it's your final question, and it's going to be the hardest. That's what everybody tells me anyway. Sarah, tell me 3 good things about yourself.
Oh no, this is terrible. This is terrible. I can now hear my best friend Diane's voice in my head going,
God bless Diane.
Okay, so 3 good things about myself. I love life. I absolutely do love life, and I'm determined to grab all of the opportunities that it brings me. You're just going to get loads of video time of me going, oh. I guess I do. Other people are important to me. They really are important to me, and if I can have even the slightest, tiniest positive influence or effect in what's going on for someone else, then that makes me feel very happy and very fulfilled. I don't think anybody is ever really a lost cause, or you should, so that's really important to me. And I make a mean birthday cake. I can do quite a good drawing, and I jump really well in a line out for rugby, and we haven't even discussed rugby, so there you go.
I love that. Do you know what you said earlier about your girls, like you were surprised how well they've turned out, mate? It's because you are such a fantastic role model. You are such a fantastic role model, because what you've shown them is sometimes life isn't perfect, but you can get through it and be better on the other side. And that lesson in itself is so valuable, and you've been able to show them that.
People say that I talk a lot, but I can't think of anything to say a lot.
Yeah, good. It's the first time I've stumped a guest. Yes. I love that. So is your artwork, can people go on a website, or where is it for sale? Where can they see this?
Yeah. So it's Ambition Artwork, and I'm trying to be present on social media. I'm quite good with Facebook and Instagram. So if you look at Ambition Artwork, I'll come up there. I'm attempting to navigate the world of TikTok.
Oh, well done.
I
It's
would,
hard.
yeah, I wouldn't say I'm as successful at that, but I do like making a promotional video. So
Yeah.
so I have a go at that. And then the website is just ambitionartwork.co.uk. And that takes you to our landing page, and through there you can navigate through to the gallery and the online store. But yeah, I'm waiting for my influx of requests for pet portraits for Christmas presents in November. So if anyone wants a pet portrait, please get in touch in like August, and then that'll be
I was
better.
like, way before, give us some time. I love that.
Yeah.
We'll pop all the links on the podcast as well, so people
Oh,
can
that's cool. Thank you.
Thank you for being such an amazing guest. I think it's a powerful thing when you can speak about what you've been through, and hopefully it resonates with women all over the world, to show that there is another side
Yeah.
to challenge and domestic abuse. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, no, thanks very much for having me on. It's been fun.